Hi, and welcome back to episode number 6 of Nafs and Therapy. I'm so happy to be recording this episode in specific after a short Ramadan and Eid break. And today's episode is done with Imam Tabari Zahir. He is a counselor and imam in the state of California, and he's going to be talking to us about addiction, especially with the youth. So, if I were you, I would drop everything in my hands right now and I would just listen to this episode. I hope you guys enjoy it. And please, if you do feel the need to reach out for any support for addiction, if you're in the States, you could reach to Lamps of Light Foundation. And if you're outside, you could always check in for your local counselors. Okay, salam alaikum.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله.
So we're so excited to have you. I'm personally very excited for this episode. The topic is dear to my heart, and it's on addiction, spiritual as well, relationship with addiction. And before we just do a deep dive into the topic, I would love for you to introduce yourself to us and to tell us a bit what you do. I'm personally, mashallah, a huge fan of your work, so I'd love everyone to know about you.
Okay, Bismillah. So my name is Tabari Zahir. I'm a licensed clinical therapist um, in the state of California. I'm also a certified alcohol and drug counselor in the state of California. And I'm also the founder of the Lamps of Light Project. We are a behavioral health organization, and we have, we treat people for mental health issues, but our specialization is in addictions. Now, when I say addictions, I'm talking about the whole range of addictions. Most of the time, when people think of addictions, they're thinking about drugs and alcohol. But in reality, that is not the biggest problem right now, either amongst the youth or amongst the youth in general, nor amongst the Muslim youth. It's actually addiction to pornography. At the Lamps of Light Project, we get more requests from spouses, couples that are married, and individuals. Usually they're youth between the ages of like 18 to maybe 35. And they're struggling with addiction to pornography, or other type of sex addictions like solicitation, um, you know, um, imagining different scenarios and things like that. So that's what I do. Now, my role intersects with the Muslim community in Southern California, and you try to understand that Southern California has one of the largest Muslim populations in America. So we are very, very diverse. We have Muslims from China, and I mean, we have like whole communities where like the whole masjid is like 90% Chinese. We have Muslims from Armenia. We have Muslims from Russia. We have Muslims from, of course, the Middle East and Southeast Asia, North Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa. You name it. We have Muslims from that population. We have close to 1 million Muslims in Southern California. And so this was like the perfect place to set up camp. This was the perfect place to like do polls and research to find out what people were struggling with, and it just became very, very clear. Like
Uh-uh.
we live in a time of instant gratification, which leads to excessive appetites, which leads to addictions, and so the specialization was a result of just understanding that. Yeah.
Wow, mashallah. I have a million questions that I want to ask, but I first want to say, wow, I'm so kind of impressed with people who actually show up and say, "Oh, I'm dealing with porn addiction," and it's something that's very shameful usually, something that is usually very hard to seek support from centers or even from the community. So I'm wondering, and I remember when we had a very casual conversation offline before the call, we said this is something that both men and women are going through, and I'm wondering, is there kind of um like a perception of when we want to look at those who are coming and are is there something similar between all of them? Do you notice something that people are kind of mm, collectively going through?
Okay, so let me back out a little bit, right?
Uh-huh.
And let me talk a little bit about why I believe we have been successful. Okay,
Mm,
whereas I'm part of the Muslim mental health Islamic psychology community worldwide, and I talk to them. I'm on the chats. I'm getting messages. I do presentations not only here in Southern California but across the country. And I think one thing that sets us apart is, um, I'm not just coming with an academic background, right? I'm coming from a background of lived experience, being on the streets, selling drugs. I understand the lingo. I understand how people get trapped. I've done prison time because of selling drugs. And so when I put this out on the floor, the kids know I'm not going to judge them. All right. They know that I have a past. I don't mind talking about my past. My background is proof that there is redemption. When you decide to clean up and go straight. So I always put that out front. So people don't feel like, oh, he's an imam. He's hangs around the scholars and has all this academic information. No, 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 forget that. I'm just your brother who myself, alhamdulillah, I never had an addiction, unless we want to talk about addiction to money, because that's what got me jammed up and imprisoned. But it's like there's no shame here. There's no criticism. There's no judgment. And those are the kind of people that I hire at Lamps of Light. I hire people at Lamps of Light. Either they have to have a lot of experience with people who have, addictions, or, they were in the streets, or like, foster kids that have a lot of problems, or they themselves have recovered from some type of problem. It can be trauma, it can be addiction, it could be some other mental health issue, but they themselves have to have some type of life experience that will help them to look at the client with through the lens of compassion. And it's that simple. All right.
yeah.
So
Uh-huh.
you're absolutely correct. The stigma in our community is huge. It's huge. And, that's one of the things that we're working on at Lamps of Light. We're working
Uh,
on, explaining the times. This is like the times that we're living in is if in other words, if you're going to be part of community, if you're gonna be an imam in a community, if you're gonna be an activist, if you're gonna be a community worker, if you're going to be just a regular community member, a parent, a child or whatever, we have to normalize imperfection. Okay? We
uh-huh.
have to. And the reason why is because our kids are dealing with situations that humanity itself never had to deal with. Never.
Mm,
There has never been a time where humanity could hold a device in their hand. They could hold a device in their hand, and it introduces them to every fitna worldwide instantaneously. Okay? It has never happened before. So our children are wrestling with this with no blueprint. They have no, there's no former uh, explanation on, okay, when this happens, do this. It doesn't exist. So we're learning as we go along. And if we're not interested in the solutions, if we're not interested in the problems, if we don't view everything through the lens of compassion, what's going to happen is our communities are going to be devastated because you know people get married. Once they get married, you begin to know all the problems, and if the problems are overwhelming, they get divorced. That's going to have an impact on every masjid worldwide. Okay? It's going to. There's going to be so many problems. And it's simply because we turned a blind eye to what was so obvious. It was so clear what our youth needed help with. Now, in America, A lot of our buildings, it's not like overseas where like once you own a building, you own it and you can keep it and you don't have to pay taxes on it. In America, once you buy a building, you're still paying taxes on it every year. If you don't have
Ah,
community that's chipping in and helping you to take care of those expenses, then we'll be like the Christian community. The Christian community is selling their churches nationwide because the youth have not bought in to the old model of what church is supposed to be, what church community is supposed to be. So Muslims are buying up churches nationwide. I mean, every time I turn around, there's a church being bought. Big, huge churches. Muslims are, turning them into mosque. What I'm saying is that if we don't look at the problem and come up with, creative solutions, in 20 years we'll be selling churches because the youth will have so many problems. They're not interested in what's going on in the masjid.
subhanallah. So you notice that for now, at least, or there is one way or the other, people are coming and are showing up with their issues to especially to an imam. I have to say this is pretty heavy, like pretty brave to go up to an imam and to say, hey, I'm doing this, which is considered to be a sin and very frowned upon. And I'm wondering, because we know when we talk about the Islamic psychology model, we know about the nafs, which is usually very much engaged in desires and in making sure that it has what it needs, and sometimes in excess. So when it comes to addiction, do you notice a part of their spirit or a part of that psyche that we know, the Imam al-Ghazali's model of the nafs, aql, ruh? Is there some place that you feel, oh, that's where a lot of the issue lies?
Of course, right? Again, we have corporations that understand, they may not have the Islamic model, but
Mm-hmm.
they have a psychological model. And they know that human beings want to please their senses. They know this. And they pay a lot of money to psychologists, to psychiatrists, to people who study human behavior. They treat human behavior to make video games, to keep the kids attracted to social media. This is done purposely. All right. They appeal to the lowest aspects of the human being, which is, like you said, nafs, right? um they appeal so that they can capture an audience and keep them for life, because they know that wherever the heart is, right, the money follows. They know this, so they're doing it purposely to have us addicted to, Netflix and Hulu and, social media and gaming and online gambling and things like this. They design it so that they can keep clients. Muslims are no exception. Okay. Now, the thing is this: the Ghazalian model, that has been, expounded upon by like Dr. Abdullah Rothman and Dr. Human Kashavarsi from Khalil Center. The model is very nice. But this is just so that you can conceptualize problems, right? It doesn't tell us how to treat, which is something totally different. So the
Lovely.
model, the model is useful for, okay, this is what's going on. You can divide the human being into, he's biological, he's psychological, he's affected by his environment, and he's also spiritual. So the model, it just kind of helps you to conceptualize what happened and what is happening. All right? Now, when you step into the realm of treatment, you need a totally different lens. Okay? And this is where, you need a different model. Okay? You need a different model. The model that you need here is more dealing with ihsan. Okay? So Nora, let me give you an example. All right? Now let's just take like the tradition, right? Let's just look at the seerah of Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Let's just look at some of these hadith, and and then I can give you principles, all right, that apply to treatment. All right. So um, we know that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had more than one companion that was addicted to alcohol. All right, more than one. Abu Nu'aym ibn Amr was one of them. He was brought before Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam more than one time, and and in one instance, there was a companion standing with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam who basically cursed him and said, "Why do you keep coming here like this?" He said something to the effect of like, "La'anallah alayk," you know what I mean? Like, "God damn you! Like, why do you keep coming here?" And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam stopped him, and he said, "Don't say that, because the only thing that I know about him is that he loves Allah and His Messenger." Okay, okay, so this is more of an indication of treatment, because in another hadith, very similar, and some ulama say this was regarding the same person. They say it was regarding another person. They say, that when the person made this disparaging remark, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, "Don't help shaitan against your brother." Okay, so in other words, help your brother against shaitan. So in the first hadith, he's looking at the potential of the person, right? Which as therapists, we know about the strengths perspective, right? Like you don't always look at the problem. You look at, well, what resources does this person have internally to defeat the problem? This is what Rasulullah SAW is indicating. He's saying this person loves Allah, he loves the messenger of Allah, and so that is going to help him to get over the hump. And eventually he did. Okay, eventually, during the Caliphate of Uthman, radiallahu anhu, when Uthman was killed, he just went into a state of like transformative tawbah. Okay, and as far as helping your brother, it's like, don't say disparaging remarks. In other words, don't have this mind full of stigma, of judgment, of only you can only see the haram that he has done, but you cannot see the potential that he can do. All right? So that's the first instance. Okay? I'll give you another instance. Of the young boy who came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he was the hadith, this is in the Musnad of Imam Ahmed for your listeners if they want to look it up, and it is sahih. A young man, he came to the doorway of the masjid. He's listening to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam talk to his companions, and then he just interjects all of a sudden. He says, "Ya Rasulullah, give me permission to commit zina." So for your listeners, like we, he wants to have intimate relations with the opposite sex without being married. That's what he wants to do. And he's asking the messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to give him permission to do it. Why? Because later on he tells us this was the most beloved thing to him, which means this is an addiction. All right? Or it's either an excessive appetite, or best case scenario is an excessive appetite. We're dealing with the nafs. Worst case scenario is an addiction. Okay, we're still dealing with the nafs in a even more fallen state. All right, the companions around Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they start saying, "Be quiet, meh meh, uskut, shut up, be quiet." All right, not Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He tells the young man, "Come close, come, sit in front of me." The young man sits in front of him, and then he begins to ask him a series of questions. He says, "Do you have a mother?" He said, "Yes, Ya Rasulullah, I have a mother." He said, "Would you want someone to do this with your mother?" He said, "Wallah, Ya Rasulullah, may my parents be sacrificed for you?" "No, I wouldn't want someone to do this with my mother." And Rasulullah SAW says, people are like that. They don't want someone to do that with their mother. And then he begins to ask him, "Do you have a sister? Do you have an aunt? Do you have a daughter? He asked him about every female relative that a man can have, and says, "Would you want someone to do that with them?" Then people are like that. They don't want you to do that with their family. The young man at the end of the hadith, so then Rasulullah SAW made dua for him, right? He touched his chest, and the young man said, "When I left the presence of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I entered with zina being the most beloved thing to me. I left with it being the most hated thing to me." And he tells us in another narration that when he left, one of the girls that he used to play the game with was calling him, and he refused. He wouldn't go. All right? Because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam helped him. He helped him. That's what we have to do. Now, what he did was called what we call motivational interviewing. Motivational interviewing is what you do with a person to help them to overcome their resistance to treatment. Help them to overcome, their resistance. There's stages of change that people go through. When people have to
Mhm.
change, there's stages of change that they're in, and there's stages of change that you want to push them through. All right. And that's what Rasulullah SAW was doing. He was helping him go through those stages of change until he could reach, you know, the point to where without telling him, no, you have to do this, you must be like that. Don't you know what Allah said? How can you ask me that? I'm the messenger of Allah. He didn't do any of that. He didn't do any of that. He simply asked him questions that helped him to understand for himself what he needed to do, where he needed to be. He understood for himself. He made the decision for himself. That's treatment. So, my
Mhm.
argument is this: the first principle of treatment when you're dealing with people that are subdued by their nafs, all right? They're subdued by their nafs. It's compassion. It's
Mhm.
compassion. All right? It is compassion. You must have compassion for people who are suffering. All right? So I'll give you one more principle. All right? I'll give you another hadith that conveys this principle. And there's dozens like this. All right? There's dozens. So this is in the Muwatta of Imam Malik. All right? And Imam Malik is telling us about a hadith that he heard from one of his teachers that is coming from Nabi Isa alayhi salam. Nabi Isa is the speaker. So Nabi Isa speaking to his companions, and he speaks and he starts off saying to him, "Don't speak much without the remembrance of Allah, for your hearts were hardened without you being aware." This is how he starts off. And then he starts giving us good advice, especially for those of us that are in the mental health field, especially those of us that are helping people deal with addiction. He says, "Do not look at the wrong actions of others as if you are lords. Rather, look at your own actions, knowing that you are a slave." Yani, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All right? And then he goes on to say this: some people are afflicted with wrong actions, and others are protected from them. Be merciful to the people of affliction, and be grateful to Allah for his protection. He's speaking about all of humanity right here. All right? So what he's saying is that because there's a lot of different commentaries to this. There's a lot of different commentators all throughout history to the Muwatta of Imam Malik, which, if your listeners don't know, is the very first, before Imam Bukhari, before Imam Muslim, Abu Dawud, Nisa'i, all of them, before all of them, Imam Malik's book was the most sahih book on the planet before the other imams came along. Okay? So what the commentators are saying to this is that what Nabi Isa alayhi salam, what he did is he divided all of humanity into two states. Those who are afflicted, they're mubtala, they're under trial and tribulation. Okay? And then you have those who are mu'afa, they are protected some kind of way. All right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And then Nabi Isa says, be merciful to the people of affliction. If this is not a principle, then I don't know what is. He's saying when you see people, they are trapped by their nafs. They have some type of trial and tribulation. They're falling out with their family. They don't know where to go. They don't know what to do. Be merciful to them. And there's no end to mercy. So you have to look deeply. You have to say, okay, how can I help this person? What's the best thing that will work for them? What is it that I see from my profession that will be helpful, etc. And then he goes on to say, praise Allah for his protection. It's only Allah's protection that we didn't fall into that affliction. It's only his. It's not that we don't carry the seed. We carry the seed. According to Imam Ghazali, every human being has the seed of destruction in them. And if
Mhm.
one thing goes wrong and you get and that seed, you know, breaks open and becomes a branch and it grows in your heart until it becomes like a full-grown tree, then you'll be afflicted. Sometimes people are afflicted not because of something that they've done, Sometimes Allah afflicts people because He wants to test the people around them. How will they be? How will they be? And this is what I get from the first hadith that I narrated about Nu'ayman ibn Amr when, Rasulullah Islam is telling him, no, 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 don't say anything bad about this companion. Don't say anything bad about him. In another narration, he's saying, no, don't help shaitan against your brother, right? He's helping us to see that he's afflicted. He's afflicted. Be merciful to him. Be
Mm,
merciful. This is principle number one, right? So the model that you mentioned is for conceptualization. You're just
mm,
conceptualizing the human being. Okay, the human being is made up of these parts, and
mm,
it's to guide you when you begin to treat him. All right.
mm,
When you begin to treat him, you look at that and you say, okay, he's afflicted here in his nafs, and maybe the disease, maybe there's some disease in the heart, maybe something's going on here, right? But no matter what, you have to come to the point of treatment. Okay, how do you deal with a person that's like this? How do
mm,
you deal with them? What I'm saying is, and what our principle at Lamps of Light is first and foremost compassion. And you'll be surprised how many people, when you just show them compassion, you declare their humanity, you allow them to understand, listen, it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter what you've done. We're with you. We're going to help you. You show them this compassion. Um, a lot of times that in itself is enough to like break
mm.
the ice, to you know what I mean, to get them thinking in a way of, okay, how do I redeem myself? How do I overcome myself? All right.
Yeah. I'm
So
not
so
sure if it's a
go ahead.
good segue to, yeah, I'm not sure if you're gonna continue on that piece of maybe the treatment, how to redeem oneself.
Okay.
Is this where you're going, or did I interrupt?
Yeah, well, what I wanted to do is I wanted to give you another hadith of what happens when you don't show compassion. All
Oh
right,
yeah.
which is our problem in our community many times. And I did a presentation on this before, on what I believe is why we do this, as a community, especially like from our imams, our community leaders, things like that. When somebody comes to them and they're really really struggling with something, the first thing that they do is um they think in terms of haram, right? They think in terms of, oh, fasiq, haram alayk, mahashim tish, like, things like that. Okay. And I understand where it comes from, but it's not going to work for this generation. It's not. Okay. So let me just tell you this. The hadith of the man who killed 99 people. All right. And that's another thing I want to say to the audience is, like, those of us that are in this field, Islamic psychology, Muslim mental health period, you have to think in terms, when you look at these different hadith, you have to look at it clinically. All right, you have to look at the hadith clinically. Like, okay, what are principles that I see here that I can use for explaining behavior or treating behavior? All right. So let's just look about the man who killed 99 people. And Rasulullah Islam is explaining us this hadith, and it's mainly about forgiveness of Allah, right? But there's other ways of understanding this hadith. So he says there was a man, he killed 99 people. He goes to his people and he says, who is the wisest amongst you? They indicate this monk. So he goes to the monk and he says, listen, I've killed 99 people. Is there any hope for me? The man says, no. So he kills him too. All right. He goes on to another man. I'm sorry. He goes back to his people and he says to his people, um, um, who's the wisest amongst you? They indicate a different monk. He goes to that monk and says, I've killed 100 people. Is there any hope for me? That one says, yes, there's hope for you. But now he diagnoses him. All right. He tells him, listen, you come from a bad people. You have to make tawbah, but not here, not in your land. You have to leave and make tawbah. All right? So the man leaves, but he dies before he reaches the place. The angels of wrath come for him, the angels of mercy come for him, right? And they began to argue amongst themselves. The angels of wrath say, this person hasn't done any good his whole life. We're taking him with us for punishment. The angels of mercy say, no, 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 no. He was on the path of redemption. He was on the path of Toba. He's coming with us. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent a third angel in the form of a human being and settles the case. Say, listen, if he's closer to the place where he committed all those murders, then he goes with the angels of wrath. If he's closer to the place where he was going to make Toba, he goes with the angels of mercy. And then Allah contracted the earth so that he would be closer to the place of Tawbah, so he was saved. Now, let's
Oh
just look at this.
wow.
Right, look
Yeah.
at this clinically. Like, look at this clinically. Number one, he's asking his people for help. He's in pain. He's saying, who is the wisest one? Who is the one that can help me with this? Okay? That's really what he's asking. When he goes to the man, and he asks the man, is there any hope for me? He tells him no. He causes him to despair. We have people like this in our communities
Mm.
that say, Ittaqullah, you know, this is haram. You have to give this up. You make him feel worse about himself or herself. Okay? So we have people like that because of their words, because of how they view the person or how they themselves view the action, they cause you to despair. So he kills him. In our case, some people, they just go return back to it and they never go to the masjid again, right? In our case. But he was really in pain, so he went back to his people and said, give me an out. Give me another person who, send me to someone who can help me. When he goes to that person, this person is wise. He's a wise counselor. And in our time, this should be the therapists. This should be the counselors, right? This should be, those Islamic psychotherapists that can say, listen, it doesn't matter what you've done. There's hope for you. And then you do the diagnosis. You say, listen, this is what's going on. Actually, this is what's happening. All right. And then this is what you have to do. Right. But you don't shut them down. You start with mercy. All right. You start with mercy and then you continue on. Okay. So
Mm.
to me, this hadith is so clear. It's like you don't cause people to despair. You always remind people that there's hope. It doesn't matter what they have done. And then you guide them on the way to redemption. You guide them. You're the guide. You're showing them, okay, this is what's going on. Okay?
Mm.
This is what's going on, and then this is what you need to do.
Mm. And I'm imagining, because I'm reflecting a bit on maybe some of the people that I see and how difficult it is to deal with addictions, especially those who are practicing Muslims, like those who are um, on their prayer, on their like they don't skip a fard, and they're really trying to stay into practice and not to abandon this religion altogether because of what they consider as addictions. And I notice a lot of the times that they lack compassion for themselves, like, oh, like I'm not going to
Yes.
be worthy for
Yes.
Allah's
Yes.
mercy.
Yes, yes, yes.
Mm,
This is a big problem. And this is
mm,
why we
mm,
always have to start from mercy. This is why we always start with mercy. Okay. And
mm,
sometimes the mercy looks different. It's going to look different for an organization. The way they have to be merciful, it looks different. The way the family has to show mercy is going to look different. The way the person has to show mercy to themselves is going to look different. And the way, and the way that the imam, the way that they show mercy is going to look different. So you're absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct.
mm,
But merciful is the first principle. Mercy is the first principle.
mm.
Just having compassion, teaching compassion is definitely the first principle. It looked like you were getting ready to say something. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm curious to know, how do you deal with that when we want to support someone to kind of actually taste Allah's mercy, especially
Yeah.
that we do know that like nothing happens as a coincidence. Like uh, God guided them to seek, for example, support from you, or from me, or from someone who has some Muslim background, and who has some like background on Islamic integrated therapy. So, how do you approach this? Of I really want to taste Allah's mercy, and there's something that blocks it all the time.
Okay. So I'm going to start with what you just said, right? Um, that like somebody who's praying, or sometimes I have clients who follow the Quran, right? I have
Mm.
people, right? They're students of knowledge, right? And they just they can't give it up. All right. So the first thing is this. The first thing I want to talk about, and the first thing that I want to deal with, is the individual. What I want them to know is that, in different ways, I am going to explain to them, وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي Adam.
Mm.
Okay? وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي Allah has ennobled Bani Adam. All right? And He surrounds the self. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, no matter how bad you think you are, no matter what you think you have done, right? Allah surrounds the self. You have to have the courage to start again. You have the courage. You have to vote on freedom, right? You have to do real self care. Now, what I find a lot of times is this: when a person is what I do all of my prayers. I begged Allah to remove this from me. I read, I do my adhkar, I do my kirat, I do my salawat ala nabi, I do all of these things. In reality, what they're doing is spiritual bypassing. All right? They are putting forth this, like I'm doing these good deeds in exchange that Allah will cure me. But you haven't done the work to be cured. There's work that has to be done. And as we began stripping down their life, as we began pulling apart their life, you're going to find things like trauma. You're going to find things like neglect from their parents. You're going to find things like, exposure to, harmful situations. Maybe they were molested as a child. Maybe they were, I mean, there's for every person, what needs to be healed is going to be different. But this is what I always find. I always find that, there's something that's blocking the healing. Always, almost always. It's something that's blocking the healing. I mean, maybe in thousands of hours of treatment, you might find one person that's like, no, I had everything. I went to a private school. My parents were rich. You know what I mean? My life was good. And,
Mm.
I chose this for myself. And so I fell into it. Right. Okay. But even in that, there's something that has to be healed, right? Okay, so you made a choice. You were, you know, kana mukhtiyar. You made a choice. And so now you have to make other choices. Okay? And I always tell my clients, there's not going to be a substitute for mujahada here. All right? Don't think that I have a magic wand. I'm all out of them. Or all the magic wands that I had are out of batteries. I'm sorry, they just don't work anymore. You're going to have to do the work. You're going to have to do. Now, I'll show you how to do the work. And I guarantee you, if you do the work, you will overcome. Why? Because Allah says that if you take one step, He'll take 10. All right? You have to take that one step. Okay? So this is my, if we're talking about change, all right? If we're talking about change, I have 3 C's. All right? This is my 3 C's. Number 1, you have to you have to conceptualize your own case. The early Muslims, they used to say, "Man arafa nafsahu faqad arafa rabbahu." Right? He who knows himself can then go on to know his Lord. All right? Okay. You have to know yourself first. You have to conceptualize. This is the first C. This is muhasaba, if you want to say it in Arabic. And you just need to just take time, and we need to just understand the self. And that first C, sometimes I'll stay there for 20 sessions. Let's just understand the self. Let's understand, how did the nafs get carried away with this? Okay? So this is the first thing. The second thing is, the second C when it comes to change is commitment, niyyah. All right, niyyah. And we know that this in Islam, most of the hadith books start with this because it's you don't have anything without it, right? إنما الأعمال بالنيات. Like everything begins with niyyah. But we have to help our clients to develop niyyah, to have ikhlas in their niyyah. It doesn't most people think, oh, I have a niyyah. Listen, I've read stories of ulama. It took them 1 year to develop a true niyyah. A true niyyah where it wasn't mixed with anything. It was, this is what I'm going to do, and no matter what happens, this is what I'm going to accomplish. Okay? So we have to teach them how to have a niyyah, how to have the correct niyyah. And I give them all of the psychoeducation. I tell them, listen, this is most important because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and this is a principle with Allah, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُوا مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. If you don't have the niyyah and begin to walk on the path of change, it's not going to happen. This is going to be the hardest thing that you've ever done, but it's doable. And you have the promise of Allah. You have the
Mm,
Allah will not cheat you. All right?
mm,
The
mm,
impulsive
mm,
self, but this is after we've conceptualized. We already understand his triggers. We already understand, I ask them hard details. Okay, you're in your bedroom. All right? You're in your bedroom and that impulse says, let's watch some porn. All right? Tell me about it. Did you try
mm,
to fight it? Right? Did you know what I mean? Why did you take the phone in the room with you? When you were downstairs, did you put your phone in your pocket knowing what you were going to do? Did your niyyah with the porn started downstairs and then it became an impulse when you got upstairs? Like we're working through all of this at the level of conceptualization before we get into, okay, now let's talk about change, right? And then I'll tell him on the path of change, you're right here, right? You're just beginning to think about it. All right? You're just beginning to think about it. But and then I'm just giving him the psychoeducation. This is this. This is this. And I can give you an example right now. I'm actually um, working with someone right now, and I this is what he told me. He said, "Listen, he said I was I was studying for a test. I was studying for the test, and um, I wanted to uh, it just came to me as an impulse. Let's look at something, right? And I was like, okay,
mm,
this is normal, right? Because you're in a state of anxiety, you're in a state of stress, and the body and the brain, of course, the nafs, it knows that the way that you would relieve yourself, is that you would go and look at something and then maybe masturbate, and then you feel this dopamine rush. All right. So it's
mm.
natural. It's understandable that that's at the
Yeah.
time that it would come. But then he tells me, yeah, but I would told myself, no, we're going to fail this test if we do this. Well, we got to take the test tomorrow. So I was like, okay, this is a motivator. You had a motivator. It was tangible. You could smell it. You knew if I do this, I'm going to fail at this. So what are those motivators? We got to develop that. And then he wanted to become um um I'm not going to say argumentative, but he wanted to kind of like regress and be like, no, I mean, I just want to be spiritually strong, and I want to, just be able to do it and just say no, the same way I said no for the test. And I told him, what you're telling me is that you're a baby, and you want to just start off running 100, the 100, the 100-yard dash. Doesn't work
Mm.
that way. Doesn't work that way. All right? So we know that this worked for you. This is what worked. We have to find tangible things. Tangible. Right now. It could be like, okay, I want to start talking to this girl, and I don't want this to come up in my relationship, so I have to become sober from pornography. All right. So you need something tangible. All right.
Mm.
And then that helps with the commitment, with the niyyah, right? And so, but you have to do all of that conceptualizing the case first. You have to understand this person. You've got to break down all those walls of shame. You've got to break down all of those, and you've got to have these real conversations. It's going to be real uncomfortable for them at first, but
Mm-mm.
no there's no substitute for this. All right?
Yeah.
No
Yeah.
substitute. Then the person can actually begin to do the work. All right?
Mm.
The last C
Mm-hmm.
is, right, consistency.
Mm.
Consistency. All right? And if you want to understand consistency from our tradition, Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, when the man came to him and said, Ya Rasulullah, what is the most beloved deed to Allah? Right? He said, It's the consistent deed that you do all the time. Walau qalla, even if it's small, even if it's tiny, but you do it all the time. All right? So when we talk about doing consistency, you know, okay, what are we going to do that is consistent? Now, I have to tell you this, Nora, and I'm not really on a time schedule, so it's up to you how long you want to go. All right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We'll
Um,
we'll give it a bit more, so that we could as well have a few more minutes just for a small advice.
yeah,
Yeah.
no problem. So, Rasulullah SAW is telling us that Allah loves the person that is consistent. And when a person is working on themselves to overcome these habits, of course Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to help them. Because in the
Mm.
Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling, right? He says, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا. He's most successful, the one who purifies himself. وَقَدْ خَابَ مَنْ دَسَّاهَا. And he's ruined the one who leaves it as it is. So Allah Ta'ala is telling us that this is what he wants, that this success is to the one who purifies himself. And the one who leaves it the way it is, he just leaves his soul on default or filled with bad habits. He ruined himself. Allah doesn't want the person to be ruined. وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. You have the ability to draw near to Allah. So let's get on it. Let's work on it. And then I tell them, I don't know if you've ever had a chance to read that book, Atomic Habits. This is one of the techniques that we use.
I
Excellent.
haven't.
The guy's name is James Clear, I believe. It's
Mm.
called
I think I
Atomic.
read like just the habits themselves. I was too lazy to go through the whole thing.
Yeah, no, this is an excellent book, right? Because
Mm.
especially when you look at some of the concepts that he has, and then you can say, "Oh, this is Dean." Like we have this understanding. He talks
Mhm.
about the British bicycling team, the Olympic bicycling team. Um, um, they were like one of the worst in the Olympics, and when they finally made the commitment to be the best, th- their 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 formula was, we are only going to improve 1% a day, 1% a day in whatever we're working on. So if it's muscle growth, if it's wind shear, or if it's their diet, whatever it is that they were going to change, they were only 1% a day. That's it. Over 1 year, that turns into a 40% improvement. And they
Mhm.
kept doing it and kept doing it and kept doing it until they became the best for a decade in bicycling. All right.
Oh, wow. Mm.
This is what Rasulullah SAW is telling us. Do that small thing, but do it consistently. All
Mm.
right. And that's going to look different for everybody. Okay. That's going to look different than for, like, because you have to be aware of what motivates them, right? You have to be aware
Huh?
of, um, of what, like what comes to them easily. And I use harm reduction psychotherapy. All right.
Mhm.
Harm reduction psychotherapy is simply, you're looking at the strengths of the person, and abstinence is not a criteria. Abstinence is a goal. We want to reach abstinence from whatever the behavior is, but it's not a condition for treatment. Because there's some people, especially when it comes to drugs and alcohol, they're like, no, you have to be free from drugs and alcohol before you can get any treatment. That's not the Quranic concept is to wean the person down, to walk them down. That's the Quranic concept. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Aisha radiallahu anha, she tells us that if Allah had forbade alcohol all at once, none of the Arabs would have become Muslim.
Oh
This is
yeah.
what she says. They wouldn't
Totally.
have,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But what Allah did is He gave psychoeducation first. He says this is the handiwork of shaitan, right? This is
Mhm.
shaitan wants to have enmity between you, and he was talking about gambling, he was talking about drinking, and he was talking about the divining arrows, like what we do is like omens, right? Looking for
Mhm.
omens. Okay. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, don't come to the prayer while you are, you know, sukhara, you're drunk, you're intoxicated, right? Don't come to the prayer like that. Finally, he said, fashtanibu, just stay away from it, right? That's harm reduction. That right
Mhm.
there is harm reduction. If somebody comes to me and says, listen, man, right now I'm looking at 3 hours of pornography a day. I'm like, okay, all right. Our first goal is just 2 hours and 50 minutes. That's it. That's
Wow.
it. I want you to just take off 10 minutes. 10 minutes. That's all I want you to do. This is harm reduction. And
Mm.
this works. This works. If you try to tell them, give it all up at once, they're going to come back to it all at once.
Mm.
95% of the people are going to do that. All right. So these 3 C's is really harm reduction. All right. It's
Mm.
harm
Mm.
reduction. I use harm reduction psychotherapy. So,
I love that. Yeah.
so we start with just conceptualization. I want to
Yeah.
know, how did you get into this? I want to know what your triggers are. I want to know, when does it happen for you? Why does it happen? What are you thinking about when it happens? What did you try in the past that worked? What did you try in the past that did? That's just conceptualization. This is muhasaba, looking at the case. Once I
Mhm.
understand that, then we go into commitment. All right.
Mm.
You got to make a
Mhm.
commitment. And now, I'm going to use all of my motivational skills to walk him through making the commitment. But I know that sometimes it might take a month to solidify your niyyah. All right.
Yeah.
But,
Oh,
wo- but, but once you have niyyah, it's much easier.
like a clear
Now,
nia, like it's a pretty
clear
decent.
niyyah, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
not coming from me. It has to come from them.
Yeah.
Now,
Mhm.
once they can articulate to me the niyyah, and it's very clear, and I keep on hearing the niyyah, I keep on hearing the niyyah, and they're making progress, then we work on consistency, right?
Oh, lovely.
Consistency. So
Uh,
this is my outline, of how I work with clients.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's so lovely. And I feel like this is such a great place as well to wrap up and to end here with the 3 C's, to have them in mind. And inshallah, maybe we could do a part 2 as well sometime later,
Yeah, yeah, as you like. Inshallah.
to just keep the conversation going, because I also have so many things that were open up to me while having this conversation. But I think for me this was very insightful, and just the emphasis that you've made and you've given on the compassion piece, that is sometimes, even though it can like be super clear to us, yeah, of course we have to be compassionate,
Yeah.
but no, like it's not like oh yeah, like the APA says we need to be compassionate. No, 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 no.
Right,
It's
right,
like
right.
legit we need to be compassionate.
Right.
So I want to thank you so much for your time. I'm going to be putting in the show notes all of the details for the foundation. If anyone wants to reach out to you, you have a
Yeah.
very nice Instagram page that I am also fond of, so that they
Alhamdulillah.
could easily reach out. Alhamdulillah. And any last thoughts before we wrap up?
Um, like my main message to everyone, to families, to individuals, to organizations, especially the leaders of those organizations that service the Muslim community, this is the challenge of our times. All right. This is the challenge of our times. We are in a time that is appealing to the nafs al-amara of every human being. And the Muslims are not immune to this. All right. So you can look at, even if you don't have an excessive appetite, and even if you don't have an addiction, you are still covered in the dust of instant gratification. All of us. We can open up our phone and we can order a pizza. It'll be here in 20 minutes. We can
Yeah.
order food. We can order movies. We can order from Amazon. We can order, we get things and we have an expectation of getting it now. If I don't get
Yeah.
it today, it better not be later than tomorrow. This is the time that we're living in. And there are
Exactly.
some of us that are going to fall prey to this. Our nafs is going to expand, but in a dysfunctional way. All right. And we have to be thinking about, how do we help our people? How do we help our people? It is not enough to just say, pray more, do more
Mm.
adhkar. That's not enough. When a person has an underlying condition, it's not enough. All right.
Yeah.
The underlying condition has to be treated. Okay. We all have to become experts at prevention. Every therapist, every clinician, every counselor, every imam, we have to set up, ways of explaining prevention to our families, to our individuals, to our kids, things like that. As we say in English, an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure. The clinician is the cure, but we got a waiting list right now. We
Oh,
have a
totally.
waiting list. Okay, so it's like,
MashaAllah.
it's like you know, help us out, help us out. Like everybody has to do their part. Um, and then some people are going to have more than just an excessive appetite. It's actually going to turn into an addiction. Now, you'll have some people, they'll pick their addiction. They'll say, oh, well, I do excessive shopping and I do it all the time, but it's not like I'm using drugs or something, right? And I'm
Mm.
like, it doesn't matter. Okay, it,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter if it's shopping, it doesn't matter if it's gaming, it doesn't matter if it's pornography, right? The nefs
An
is
addiction
still
is an
functioning.
addiction.
An addiction is an addiction, right? And it comes in between you and proper spiritual connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All right?
SubhanAllah. Thank
You
you.
know,
Yeah.
everybody has to know this, So
Yeah, totally.
that's what I would say to everyone. Like, understand the time. Understand the time that we're in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
lovely. عن جد إن شاء الله إن شاء الله إن شاء الله God يعني make this easy for us to meet to do another meeting as well. I just
inshallah.
want to thank you so much for your time and for
No
your
problem.
effort and energy with us. And alhamdulillah.